What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Nerd Gen Report. I'm your host, Pablo, and joining me, as always, is Mr. Brian Schultz. Daredevil. We'll get into a conversation about the last episode and where this series is already being talked about as the mistake. I saw a headline of the mistake that Daredevil made. They're fixing it in this one. As far as the comparison people are making to the first season. People already see the difference and know the difference and feel the difference. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk a little bit about Invincible. And I think it's genius as far as the writing, the cinematography, the way they do everything there is just top notch. And we'll get into a conversation about Jake Schreier's X-Men. And what we think the X-Men should, I think, probably avoid, and what new avenues or corners of that universe should they be exploring as far as the X-Men? Because again, we've had two decades of X-Men in various different ways. Yeah. So we have to. These X-Men that they're going to be introducing can be reminiscent of something we've already seen is going to fall flat, I think. So let's see. Daredevil, episode 4, Brian. The two people I've been talking to about this outside of you is shout out to Tracy and Freddie. I've been talking about it with them, and obviously with my wife, she even she can't wait for next week. Okay. This episode of Daredevil sets up the kind of unknown, but where we already know it may lead to, but we want to see how this goes after this latest development. Brian, what did you think of that episode?
Okay. So there's some things I really liked about this episode. I did have a couple questions tonally about this episode. I want to get your thoughts on it, specifically music and a little bit of the action blocking at the end of this episode. But big stakes. So I think that's the way I would describe this. Felt, it's only 8 episode season, but it felt very much like the classic mid-season finale that a lot of the longer old school network shows used to do, where you get that cliffhanger, big development midway through the year. Yeah. This was very much that kind of episode. And obviously this will be a spoiler discussion, so don't listen or don't watch if you haven't watched the episode yet. To me, I really enjoy what's going on with Bullseye this season. The promise and the tease of the premiere and the hints along the way. I think we got our first real look at what Wilson Bethel is becoming and is up to, and I'm a fan. Yeah. I really enjoyed the opening sequence leading to the diner. He finally got to be, it's weird, he's been a part of this Daredevil world for 3 different seasons now, but he's kind of never gotten to inhabit the comics Bullseye part of that persona, right? He's been dressed as Matt, or he's been himself in flashback or in present, and we finally got to see him actually embrace being his own sort of alter ego in this episode, and I really enjoyed it. That was probably my favorite sequence of the episode, with one question, like I said, about music. But what's your take? I mean, Wilson Bethel's been hyping this for a while, saying this is the most fun that he's had, saying that this is like something he's always been waiting to kind of be able to lean into in the show. And we'll see where it clearly is going to have more to build on from here, the way they left it. So what did you think of sort of the way he kind of got to full force be Bullseye in this episode?
So, I mean, we've gotten iterations from Colin Farrell where he was straight on Bullseye already. He already was that guy as Bullseye. And then we got the sort of genesis of him. The first, I guess, origin story for his character in the Daredevil season 3, correct?
Yep. Yeah.
And it was I think he did phenomenally in there as well. But he wasn't, again, like you said, embracing the character or that character of Bullseye yet. And in this one, he leaves his calling card, that Bullseye. It reminded me of one of the episodes in season 3. I don't know if it was the first or second. I'm not sure which one, but it sort of started off the same way, him going through his routine albeit not in a lavish apartment or a nice apartment, but in wherever he's at, and still going, and still caring about his, he has OCD kind of situation, right? He is still caring about how neat things are. And the whole sequence is so great because he is so volatile that we want to see what happens next for each second that he's on screen. And I thought it was well executed and a good introduction as to what he is going to be, or how he is going to be a part of this next stage in the season.
The subtleties here that really worked for me were the treatment of innocent bystanders. So you think back even to Farrell's caricature portrayal. You meet him on the plane, right? And he kills his seatmate with a peanut, not using that as any sort of standard of excellence. Although I think Farrell was actually pretty entertaining in that version of it. But just that message of this dude doesn't care about anybody. He'll kill anyone at the drop of a hat. We see here, this version of Bethel does have this very twisted code that he's now kind of living by, where he really likes his landlady, right? He's like clearly like friendly to the cat.
Yeah.
And then follows that up with he protects the dog in the one diner. And he's entirely focused on the anti-vigilante task force and the Fisks. So I liked that real specificity of like, this dude is unhinged. He's crazy. We know that from like the trauma and the childhood and all the therapy scenes they showed us back when season 3 of the Netflix show. But like, weirdly, he clearly sees himself as the hero of this journey.
Yeah.
In what he's doing, to the point of when he meets Matt in the apartment, it was almost like a junior version of the conversation with Frank on the roof, where he's like, I'm doing what you won't do.
Yeah.
But we're actually on the same side.
Yeah.
And I was having, it wasn't the same gravitas, but I was having flashbacks to that content. And I really like the writing for Wilson Bethel. I like what Bethel did. I like this turn for Poindexter. I like the costume. I realize it's not going to, that's one you got to be careful with, but I like that it's tactical. I like that he is, putting his symbol on stuff, and because this dude is not right in the head. So he would do stuff like that. And so I really enjoyed everything about that. My only question for you is the Billy Joel.
The New York State of Mind?
Yeah. So I get it, because you're riffing a song lyric in New York for a dude whose mind is not right. I get the what you're doing there. However, it was very tonally different than anything this show has ever done. And I felt like it moved toward what is now an action movie trope, which is they love to throw a pop song in while there's excessive violence going on. You see it all the time now, right? It's the Tarantino effect of it all, which I personally am tired of and don't particularly like in general. So my question is, did it work okay here? Because part of the reason they did it is the guy doing it is crazy. And I feel like the song is meant to underscore that he is crazy. So were you okay with it?
I think I was fine with it. I think I was more, I believe, focused on his mannerisms and the things that he does rather than the music. I think he could have put anything there that would have been, you could have found something suitable for that moment as well. It didn't have to be that song,
Okay.
So yeah, that's how I think about it. But I was mostly focused on what he was doing and not necessarily on the music. But I do understand that contrast of music versus and what is supposed to make you feel versus what's happening on screen. Yeah, that is being done a lot.
And I have to admit, I was surprised that the music continued once he fired that first projectile from the straw. The reason I say that is because when they first did it, I was like, oh, they're showing this guy in his home life, and we know he's about to go do something crazy.
Yeah.
So I was actually expecting the moment he turned to that first cop and fired, I thought the music would switch off. Because every other fight in this show has really been, they don't really use music as a driver of that. It's really just the beats of the action. It's very like undertone type music, if they have it at all. I have to admit, like when I watched it more than once, the first time it actually took me a little bit out of the scene. I was so jarred by like, I just don't expect this in my Daredevil show. But when I went back the second time and I knew it was there, then I was much more just locked in on what he was doing, the creative ways that he was taking these dudes out and the angles they were shooting. And I was kind of enjoying it more that way. But I'd be curious to other folks, the first time you saw it, did it feel a little weird because we just haven't seen this particular show use that trick in terms of its action? Just a question.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Let us know in the comments below what you guys thought of that sequence and the music that they used for that sequence.
What did you think of the boxing scene?
The boxing scene was interesting. Again, it was when Fisk is in the room and you want to know what he's doing. And that was the I guess the most intriguing part of that. And I guess we'll talk about Vanessa in a moment, but
yeah, let's save her. That's the main part of the episode. Yeah.
Yeah. You wanted to see if this dude was going to go crazy on this guy. I was pretty much.
It's something that obviously was in the trailer, right? And I was kind of curious as to what the full scene was going to look like, because it looked a little silly when it just gave you that one quick shot of him punching. I found that I actually enjoyed the scene right up to the point where I was kind of like, okay, so these guys have seen Rocky 4. They clearly, the other guy he's fighting definitely did the full. I was looking for the
Twitch.
No, I was looking for Duke.
What are you guys doing? This is supposed to be an exhibition.
I was like, where's that guy? When he realized that this is not going to go well for him. But I kind of liked it because it, as I've said, this season has really felt like Wilson Fisk as caged animal. Yeah. In his office, right? Holding back when people he doesn't like the Matthew Lillard character, are talking to him. And this felt like his like cathartic, finally, I get to just be me for a couple of minutes. And so I actually really liked what they did there. I thought the boxing itself looked pretty good. Some of the shots they had him do to kind of make him seem so tough and fearsome. I thought even his comment about like, he won't lay a hand on me, I thought was actually very telling, right? Mm-hmm. Of like, he understands, like, it's not about boxing, why he won't lay a hand on me. It's about rage and it's about power and things like that nature. So I actually found that I enjoyed the staging of that scene a lot more than maybe I expected to, given I thought I could trend toward the ridiculous. So I did really like that. And then before we get to Vanessa, what did you think about kind of what was going on the side? So we get some, Matt and Karen working with the first mate of the Northern Star. We get Buck Cashman doing his best, kind of what he does best, moving the story forward in that regard. What'd you make of that whole development and sequence?
Where are they getting their intel as far as the AVT anti-vigilante task force?
Yeah.
Where are they getting the intel to find out where this guy was? Is that the guy? I mean, now, but you still, they still got that tape. So that's still damning, right? Yep. And they perhaps don't know about it. So that I call into question that where are they getting the intel?
Because this was not a lot of Matt in this episode, right? Yeah. Matt's kind of in the back seat of this episode. Daredevil pops up twice, I think, and he has the one scene with Karen, but this is really not his episode. So
yeah, we get more into Vanessa and obviously Bullseye.
Did you want more, or were you okay with Daredevil versus Bullseye in the apartment?
No, I think it was the timing of it, the length of the fight, and the interaction that they had was fine. I don't think we needed anything leading up to some sort of resolution or someone beating the other. This is obviously something. And as comic book fans know that this is something that goes on and on for however long, right? Until something, I guess, reaches a conclusion. But even then, 5-10 years later, they're at it again. Yeah. So the minimal amount of time that they do that, I'm fine with, because I know based on what we've seen, they're not going to be repeating the same sort of things. So it's always new when we get to see them interact, which is what I enjoy. As far as Karen doing her, I mean, for me, she's serving a purpose. She's just not there. She's not what this girl is, the night agent girl from the first 2 seasons. She's not that to me yet.
No.
Although the White Tiger needs to show some skills, because right now she just has the amulet and she's walking around, not really doing much, just whispering and talking to people. That's it. You know, so
hold that thought, because it's definitely one of those that I think it actually, in a weird way, links to the Vanessa situation just from like a time allocation standpoint going forward. But I was okay with the fight in the apartment not being that long, actually, just because I feel like even in season 1, as flawed as it was, they had a big drag down in the premiere, right? I mean, that led to him dropping Bullseye off the roof. I guess you could argue how much pent up stuff from Foggy does he still have to sort through? Would he want to just go harder after this guy if he saw him again? I kind of was okay with them not having a long drag out fight, figuring that, like, look, we kind of know from the way this season is setting up that there is this uneasy coexistence they're going to have, and that eventually that'll break down. And I'm sure they'll have plenty of chances for them to do their thing head to head at some point. But so I was kind of okay with that.
Do you think Bullseye is attempting to show Matt some remorse in the steps that he's taking? Because he's not like doing it in innocent people. He's doing in the same individuals, although, you know, it's no different almost from what Frank does.
This is my point. Yeah, this is the point, right? Like, he is very much employing a Punisher playbook. And I think part of what's unspoken here is that Matt has to grapple with the fact that he counts Frank as a friend and an ally, albeit one that he doesn't agree with all the time. This guy he doesn't view as a friend in any sense of the word, but now he's confronted with, like, wait, this guy's doing the same. He's actually doing the same exact thing.
The only difference, I think, is that Poindexter Bullseye is more like Jane. She's a weapon. It's a weapon that can be used.
I would say the difference is that Frank has a consistent line for what he thinks is good and evil. And if you're on the wrong side of evil, he's got everyone on that list.
Yeah.
Poindexter only has the Fisks
on purpose.
That. So, like, right. So, like, if you assumed Poindexter killed both Fisks in that ring, it's not like he would then be like, okay, who's the next evil person that I would go after? That next target could just as well be Karen, right? Like, it could be anybody. That's the difference. And I think Matt knows that, but, like, Matt is also stuck with this same dilemma of, like, yeah, I'm trying to stop Fisk my way, but this guy is trying to stop Fisk. So there, like, when it comes to there's a certain alignment here that you can feel, right? That you can feel, you know, setting up, which leads to the kind of end sequence.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe just wait, like, Vanessa, like, the role that she plays in the episode, and then where do you think it goes from here? And do you actually think she's dead?
For the show, it will be interesting to find out if she is, to see how Kingpin reacts. Because if she's alive, there is something holding him back from being whomever he was or wants to be. You know what I'm saying? His true form, I would say. As long as she's around, there is some hope of him being talked down from doing whatever he needs to do. And she's that person. Without that person, it's interesting to see if anyone could ever be that person again for him, or you get the Kingpin that we haven't seen before as far as his ruthlessness and whatever he wants to accomplish without anyone holding him back. If she's alive, she's in a hospital somewhere, and that'll be the thing used against him if she's still around.
So in the publicity tour for this season, D'Onofrio lets slip that she's dead.
Okay.
He references her death. One of the producers of the show actually pushed back on that.
Okay.
And said, is she actually dead? So I don't know if D'Onofrio was Garfielding us or what, but, like, we're going to find out obviously next week whether this is, because she is not technically dead when the episode ends, right? It looks like she's dying.
Yes.
For sure. And I would point out in the comics, there is a run where Vanessa Fisk loses her memory due to an injury. and comes back as an amnesiac, and that affects her behavior toward the Fisk and toward Daredevil. And if you notice where the projectile hits her, it's in the head, where you're kind of like, is there a world where she's going to survive comatose for a while and then return as an amnesiac? That would be comics accurate if it happened. Now,
that would be interesting too.
So we'll see if D'Onofrio was lying and just kind of, playing us for fools with his comment or not. We're certainly led to believe she died. Mm-hmm. Here's my question for you, though, and I think you're touching on the key point. If Islet Zur is not in this show for real, like if the actress is gone, the character is gone from the show, I consider that a real loss for the show. I think the character and the portrayal from the moment she's been in season 1, I think have been one of the more underrated glue pieces of this show. I have loved Vanessa bizarrely being supportive of this grotesque guy who she sees the best in when everyone else can't. I have loved her machinations where she's trying to one-up him, even to the very end here, where she's having that conversation about the political situation, and basically the governor's like, "I'll back you if you're with him. I won't back him by himself."
Yeah.
I think the show will miss that if she's really gone and it's just him and Buck Cashman, and that's. I think it leaves a real void, and they're taking a real risk if the character really is about to be written off.
I choose to believe that if you're saying that it is comic book accurate and that is something that happens to her in the comics, then I would assume that is going to be an interesting, again, thing, because it keeps Kingpin at bay in terms of what you would seem or look at as someone who loves someone else and would do anything for her that wouldn't jeopardize his ability to be with her. Because if she's not around and he don't care about nothing, then that's a crazy Kingpin. And I don't want it to be the guy in the second half of Luke Cage, that crazy, because that dude was crazy,
Yeah. So that's why it feels like I agree with you in the sense that for the rest of this season, if she's dead, it's highly interesting because you get the fallout of how Wilson Fisk behaves. But beyond that is where I get a little bit like, he needs a counterpoint, right? He needs a conscience, and he needs an equal of sorts, which she provided. And I just am worried that, like, if it's as good as D'Onofrio is, you can't just put this like murderous kind of unhinged Kingpin always out there. Part of what makes Kingpin brilliant is that he is restrained and he is playing chess and he is seemingly for good, at points like that has to still be there, even if he no longer has, the love of his life. So I'm fascinated. This is one of those like TBD, how they handle this. And honestly, even if she's dead, you could do flashback moments. Like you could definitely do some things with the actress if you wanted to keep the character like in his head. That would be interesting. But I think it's a big moment for this show and like where the show goes, like into season 3, like whether she is dead or not and what the ramifications of. So to that standpoint, you're right. Like, what am I most excited about or interested in? It's that, even more so than Matt and Bullseye. It's this. It's what does D'Onofrio do with this event?
Yeah, this would be a turning point either way. If she's alive or if she's dead, it'll be a turning point nonetheless. So we'll see.
This will be an interesting sorting out of guilt, because you have Kingpin who will say she should never have been there. He told her that. He told her that many times. You also will have Kingpin actually is the one who deflected the shard into her. So even though Bullseye threw the projectile, technically it was Kingpin's use of the belt that actually injured or killed her.
Yeah.
And then you have the like, what would have happened had Daredevil not intervened and kind of blocked the initial kind of salvo that Bolt. So there's a whole bunch of like, where's the blame pie going to go like after this, which I think is interesting. Now, I will admit one thing. I did not love. There was something about the way Daredevil was inserted into this scene that I didn't totally love. It's like he pops up at the periphery, right? He uses his weapon and then he plows Bullseye through the window and kind of runs off. And I was like, there was something about that didn't quite work for me. I was much more enjoying Bullseye's attempt to get to them, Vanessa being prepped with a gun, and then the fallout from that. Did you have that feeling of like Daredevil almost didn't fit in this scene necessarily the way that they seem to want him to?
No, I didn't get that sense. I didn't get that sense. I mean,
it wasn't my favorite action, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, his action wasn't my favorite action. And there's been some good Daredevil action this season.
Yeah. I only saw it once, and I've been meaning to see it again. But there was just so many good things in this show that sort of outweighed the little things that I usually tend to nitpick on. So I have to watch it again to see if anything sort of bothers me this time.
It was just something about like the way they cut the camera. He's standing to the side. He deploys the weapon to stop Bullseye. And then there's like obviously slow-mo, fast cut. And then he's like, when he kind of takes Bullseye through the window, and then they're like lying on the sidewalk, and then he like scrambles off behind a truck, and like, that's it. He's gone. And it's like, there was something about that. It just didn't feel
Daredevil.
It almost felt like amateur Batman. Like, it wasn't quite like up to standard for this guy. I was like, I would have expected. Yeah, it's just, I don't see what you think. If we watch it again, I was like, I think he's better than that. Like, I don't know what happened here. It's like, can we do another take? Like, I don't know. So I don't know what it was. It was just a little thing. But like, versus I felt like all of the Bullseye stuff was on point, where he's taking out the dudes and he's approaching the ring, and like that all that stuff was working for me. So highly dramatic episode. And Scarter-Payne claims his teaser, he's the hype man of the week. He is hyping that episode 5 is the one that takes the show in places it's never gone before.
Interesting.
He's the one out there saying that for next week.
We'll see. I gotta get that clip. We'll see if he's lying or not. I didn't know, but I think the stunt coordinator, do you know him for that show? Do you know who it is? Have you been watching the podcasts?
I have not watched the official. I watched the first one, the one that had Matt and Fisk on it, because we got some quotes from that one. I know the guy's name because he did the Netflix show, right? Isn't it an Asian sort of stunt fight choreographer?
No, he perhaps, I don't know. We may be talking about. Because I didn't notice him until when I saw him on doing the podcast. I was like, oh snap, that's the guy that got in the elevator with Captain America in Winter Soldier. He's one of the guys that gets in the elevator with Matt, not with Matt, with Cap and Civil War in that elevator scene. Anything else, Brian, before we move on?
No, I think the next thing I'm really interested to see, honestly, from a show standpoint, is when we get the first batch of monthly ratings, is to see if this show has actually come back up into sort of top tier viewing for people.
I think so.
That to me I hope so, but I mean, I think it's good enough to merit that. But I think it'll be interesting to see how much damage was done by last season if it's not.
Again, kudos to Kevin Feige for recognizing the horribleness that he was watching when they first presented him with the first season of Born Again, when they tried to make it a little bit more goofy or whatever it is that they were trying to do. It wasn't going to work. Yeah.
It's a mixed bag for me. Like, I don't know exactly how this stuff works in terms of when you green light and commit and when you have to follow through. But as you said, there was a recognition clearly before last season was done that it wasn't working. But I can't totally, and I said maybe for Feige's not the right person to ask this question to, but there's a part of me that says, if you recognized it to that degree, why release season 1 the way you did at all, as opposed to reinvesting to reshoot and develop? It's like you kind of knew the cohesion wasn't there. And so it almost felt like you threw away season 1 to get to season 2. And I'm like, I don't think you should do that in TV. That's my only question. I don't know what the resources were like. They obviously didn't feel like they could do it. But there's a world where I'm like, if you think it's that bad, if you think it's that off the mark, you should not have put out the episodes that were already done. Because that's what did a lot of the damage to the reputation of the show. And honestly, like, we're still picking up the pieces of that in the sense of, this goes to the point of no more Vanessa. Like, so let's say she's not in the show. Okay, so that's one character thread we don't have. Okay, that means we got more time now for something like White Tiger. Like, you got to make that count. Because, like, to me, Vanessa was a well-orchestrated, well-written, well-acted part. So if you're going to take that out of the show, you got to give me something in its place that is just as compelling. So I'm looking at White Tiger. I'm looking at BB, like, I'm looking at these other things that are incomplete and saying, like, one of these has to step up and deliver.
Yeah.
And to your point, White Tiger's an obvious candidate. It's like, you're putting the protege in the show. That was your choice. That's a season 1 choice. And I understand life got in the way of maybe what you originally intended, but you got to make this work now.
Yeah.
And so far, yeah, it's like she's just in the shadows, kind of popping up here and there, but she's not really contributed anything truly meaningful yet.
Yeah. There hasn't been anything, because I guess what we're getting at as far as her character, in the beginning, we just sort of felt for her. We're getting over that feeling. And now that she's involved herself, she's taken the amulet. She hasn't shown anything that would say, we need her on our side, other than doing, getting the coffee and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Not, but you know what I'm saying,
100%,
right?
100%. 100%.
Invincible?
Yeah, let's switch over to Invincible.
Did Invincible release all of its episodes?
No, we're through episode. I think we're going to talk primarily about the first couple episodes of the season. There are 6 that are out at the time of this taping. There are 2 more still to go. So they did 3 in the initial premiere, and then they've been doing weekly ever since on season 4. So,
to me, watching that first episode, I just enjoy how they moved and I think they've done it in all the seasons, where they've moved time along and sort of normalized the daily events that occur, or the ramifications of what has occurred, and sort of, rebuilding and reconfiguring their stances, everyone's stances in the world, and what they are, attempting to do with their lives, right? And just how they do it, the music choices. The music choices here, original stuff, good stuff, somebody who really thought about it and felt like this is it right here. Not just let's play the oldies and remix it and put it on there. So I really like how these guys, and the way they write, man, is truthful, in the sense of what you would expect would be occurring, in terms of them realizing the situations that they're in.
Yep.
And how they do that, the changes that a lot of these characters go through, you see, they're not just one note, I would say. They continuously change, which is something I like very much about it.
Number one thing I've always liked about this show is the attention to character. This show has gotten very grand in its scale. It's very intergalactic at this point, and I think that's a very high degree of difficulty, because when we spend time in all these different places, you have to give us a reason to care about being there.
Yeah.
And this show has been very careful in making sure that the relationships, the individual character, there's always someone on screen who I think you're invested in or actively rooting against. And I think that's so critical if you're going to go the places this show has gone to. And obviously, look, it helps because you got Robert Kirkman, right, who wrote the comic. He's also the lead writer on the show. So you have the primary mind in the room for kind of how to adapt, how to translate, and how to grow the characters. But in season 4, some of the things I've really enjoyed so far, I'm a little further than you, I think, in the watch is just the dilemmas that Mark is put through as a superhero, to me, are some of the grand questions I think you would always want to ask if someone was in that position. And I used that reference to Man of Steel to you off mic, but I'll bring it up here on mic, which is I think this season is exploring in a way the what if that was never answered coming off of Man of Steel, in the sense that we see Zack Snyder's Superman kill Zod at the end of that. And we see his anguish in the aftermath of that. We never explored the fallout of that. And I always thought that was one of the interesting paths that his Superman could have taken. We kind of see that happening here. Mark's character in the first half of this season is very much a character of conscience. He is faced with this dilemma. And I think the dilemma he faces is more poignant than the one that Cavill's Superman faced, in that he literally faces a world-ending plague, effectively. That's about to give, S.H.I.E.L.D's about to give way, the planet's about to be overrun, billions are about to be killed.
Mm-hmm.
And so he kills an innocent that is possessed by the alien. And then you see in each successive episode how he copes with that emotionally, mentally, and how it affects his next outings as a hero. That to me is brilliant writing, It's like, if you're going to make the hero put in that position, it's like, come on, man. We've seen so many of these stories. We know these heroes don't want to cross that line. But what would happen if they did and we knew they were good at heart? What would happen next? And I love that this show is willing to go there, spend time in that. And I know that it's going to pay off in some capacity by the time we get to episode 8. The reason why you put it in there, so by the season finale, he's probably going to get faced with that choice again. And we don't know who he's going to have to choose life and death for at that point. So I love that this show does that. And in doing so, I think what it allows the show to do is to give you that really graphic action and have it mean something. This ain't just like blood on screen to be blood on screen. It's like when you see those hits and those moments, like they mean something to the outcomes. So that's still my favorite thing about the that's my number one thing. I have other things, but that's my number one thing about the show.
I would agree.
It's amazing that season 4, like, it hasn't lost any steam in its ability to do that.
Yeah, and it's that writing, it's the questions that they ask, I think what they do brilliantly is sort of ask those deeper questions, and the decisions that they make are reasonable and not just out there crazy. You know what I'm saying?
No, because Omni-Man's on the same journey, right? I mean, this is I'm loving the Nolan's kind of having to revisit his past in different stops and having to deal with things that he's done. And you're kind of getting this backstory of the Viltrumites, and this is a guy who, like, right, the very first time we saw him, did something as heinous as we've ever seen a supposed heroic character do, right? Where he kills all those dudes in their version of the Justice League in the premiere. And you're like, now in this season, it's like you're seeing him try to repair these irreparable relationships. And some of it's funny, like when you'll get to a place where, like, he's going to a place where he's like, oh, I killed Space Racer. He's been buried under rock for 100 years. He's like, we just need his laser. It'll help us get. And then you get there and you realize the dude's alive. He's been, like, buried alive for 100 years. And he comes out. He's like so pissed off. He's like, and then they realize they have to work together. And you're seeing this side of Nolan where he's like trying to, like, sort of and he literally, they're like fighting and he says, I'm sorry. And the dude stops and says, what? Like, and that it kind of like changes the complexion of their relationship, leading to Nolan has to come get Mark. And you're like, oh, they have to actually try to repair their father-son relationship. So, like, I love that the show does that because it makes those other journeys, like, worthwhile. But they're also kind of funny and fun to see kind of play out because you're seeing Nolan literally go to, like, these things and you're like, damn, like he froze an entire race of beings, like, so they could never escape. And now they're like, it's just like each episode, like, damn, this guy's done a lot of shady. Yeah. And you're like, he's having to, like, relive that and try to kind of make amends because he needs these, like, different components to fight the war that he's fighting now. So it's like, it's cool. It's like really cool stuff. Again, it's like the Superman and now it's like, imagine Superman choices that he's made around the galaxy to save populations, stop creatures. If he had to go back and be like, damn, I gotta free Doomsday, or like I gotta use these villains that I kind of trapped forever. Like, that's an interesting thread. So,
So let us know in the comment section below if you've seen Invincible season 4 so far. And how many episodes are out? 5, right?
6 are out in total. I got to give one other thing, which I think this show does better than. This would probably be my number 1 for animated shows in terms of the voice cast that they chose or are choosing. All actors can do voice acting in animation. Not all of them can do it really well. I think we find out, like, Steven Yeun can do it. J.K. Simmons can do it. And what I love is this show also brings back some of the legends. I mean, you got Clancy Brown playing multiple parts in this show, right? Peter Cullen, Optimus Prime. That voice does not age. Like, he is able to conjure that Optimus Prime style voice in this show. And it's like, those are great choices. You could say it's like, does it make or break the show? No, but it really adds to the scene. Like, one of my favorite humorous scenes in episode 4 is when Damien Darkblood comes back and he takes Mark literally to hell. And I thought it's one of the funniest sequences I've ever seen, where he basically is like telling Mark how far down it is from the surface to where the devil is. And Mark's like, it's a bottomless pit. And he's like, no, not bottomless, just deep. And then they jump into it. And it takes like 2 minutes of the show
Wow.
where like they're just falling side by side and they're having a conversation because it's taken so long. And so Mark is looking at him like, and he's like, why do you wear that helmet? And it's just like they start talking about superhero gear and equipment. And for some reason, I find it hilarious because I'm just like, yeah, you know what? If superheroes or powered characters met each other, that is probably something they ultimately would talk about. But seeing them talk about it while they're like literally just descending into the underworld, it just works. And I don't know why. And you're hearing Clancy Brown in that like dark blood voice be like, helmet cool. I'm like, it's just, I don't know. It's a thing where it's like, it can get silly in the wrong hands.
Yeah.
But this show knows like, I can do that for just long enough. And then I'm going to go back to drama.
Yeah.
So I love that. I love the voice cast of this show. Fantastic.
Yeah. Let us know again in the comment section below if you've been watching this season of Invincible, because it's intense. It's an intense show. But it's a good watch, I would say.
Yeah, you're right. It is a good binge and a tough binge at the same time.
Yeah.
By the way, that city, it's Chicago-ish city that Mark lives in. How much is insurance in that city at this point? Because like every episode, there's a new species wiping out that city. I'm like, this makes Zack Snyder's Metropolis look like a utopia by comparison. What they do to this city.
Oh, snap. X-Men?
Sure. Although I will say, because this is going to be one of those golden years of animation, this one is really the first one out the gate. So, when we get to the end of this season, we'll give a rating, but mark it down because you got Invincible Season 2, Blue Eye Season 2 is coming, X-Men 97 Season 2 is coming, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Season 2 is coming, and supposedly Cape Crusader Season 2, all coming by the end of this year. 5 potential candidates for your best animated this year.
I can't wait. I'm going to probably have to do a rewatch. I mean, Brian, there's so much content to do or can do, not enough time to do it. But
I know.
A rewatch of the X-Men, or at least one of these shows, so that we can just talk about where it might be going or what are we looking forward to seeing in these next seasons for some of these shows, which blew our minds when they first came out. So, but X-Men, the Mutant Saga. This is something that we've been thinking about for some time, as far as what it needs to be in order to be successful, as far as how the reception it gets from audiences who have been accustomed to seeing certain characters written a certain way, the stories that they've told, the themes that they've touched on. What is it about this Mutant Saga, these new X-Men characters that we still know, but what story should they tell? What will they tell? So far, we know that they're going to be younger, but we don't know too much as far as that. I don't think.
I think if Sadie Sink really is Jean Grey, it probably is a tell for just how much younger. I think you just have to use that as they're not going to use a Jean Grey who's 15 years younger than Scott, right? So you kind of know, like, okay, we know how old Sadie Sink is. We know how old the characters, and if she is playing Jean Grey, great. That's your reference point. And I think it's pointing to comics accurate younger. That's what they've decided on.
I think this is perhaps one of the reasons why we say Wolverine around in these days isn't a good look, based on the relationship that he has with Jean. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't want to go too deep into it, but
no,
it's just going to be
This is one
weird.
of many questions. This is maybe going to be, let's call this the prelude to our full discussion of this. The prelude is really coming from the people making it. This is the first time we've gotten real comments from Jake Schreier and indirectly from Kevin Feige about what they're thinking about.
Okay.
Here. So that's where let's start with that. And then I think you're right. When we do like a rewatch of X-Men 97, maybe that's a great time to kind of do a full discussion of kind of like, okay, we've heard some of the rumblings of what they want to do. What should they do? Like, what should that really look like? But here's Jake Schreier. A couple of really interesting things on his X-Men movie and what's going on there. Schreier says regarding his conversations with Kevin Feige, let's start with that. Quote, I would say that we are aiming to do something that feels like a fresh start and going for something that feels new. And really something that Kevin has pushed for is this idea of what can we do in this world that hasn't been done before, end quote. So there it is, Pablo. I think we have wondered about this, and I think it's a key, I think you have to say positive recognition of you got to take everything from Bryan Singer. You got to take everything that Matthew Vaughn did with First Class. You got to take, the spin-off movies. You got to look at all the things that they pulled on, good and bad, in those films and kind of say, I missed Hugh Jackman's whole Wolverine cycle through Logan. You got to look at all that stuff and kind of say, we don't want to recycle that. Whether we liked it or not, all of that stuff is kind of like a no-fly zone. We got to do something different as a starting point. It does sound like that is one of the big things they're wrestling with right now is like, what in the comics did those guys not adapt already?
I think that is obviously a good place to start in terms of how they're going about and their approach. One thing there certainly cannot lean on is goofiness. And this idea is that we got to be funny, they're teenagers, so we got to do, no. We got to go in a direction that is visceral in terms of the treatment. I mean, it would be dope to see, even though we didn't see this type of interaction, but in X-Men, the animated series, everybody, in terms of humanity aligned and sort of living together and is not racial anymore. It's more mutant now. You know what I'm saying? So it's not, it's not like I want to see the struggle between black and white, or more so the humanity versus mutants, still with those ingredients inside of it in terms of the hatred that's being felt towards them, right? So
Absolutely.
it's how do they go about doing that without it sounding or looking old in terms of we've seen this before? That's, I think, is going to be interesting.
So Schreier doubles down on this where he says, quote, there's so many different interesting takes within the world. So we're just thinking about what are the corners of it? What are the sides of it that haven't been done so brilliantly in so many of these great movies that we can explore where it feels like we are doing something new, end quote. See, to me, what that kind of says, and I think it's really important, is if you cast a younger, call it comics accurate age group of characters, and you simply do something that feels too close to X-Men First Class, I think this will fail. And it's not, because like the people in First Class are not in their teens. But that idea of how Matthew Vaughn interpreted Xavier and Magneto getting together and founding the school, like that was done. And it was done at a level that people generally liked only 15 years ago. So even if you're like, hey, that's in the comics, I want to do that, I don't think they can. So that I think he's recognizing, Schreier is saying, like, we know we can't do that. We know that was done already, even if it was different aged actors and whatever. Like it's just check it off the list. It's happened. So how do we get around that? How do we get around that to something different? I think the other question that is interesting here is this decision to introduce Sadie Sink in Brand New Day, assuming she is Jean Grey, strikes me as like a kind of a swing because they didn't have to do that, right? If you're being like, Spider-Man doesn't need Jean Grey to sell tickets. We know that. But if you're going to put her on the board and say, this is our first mutant, our first X-Man, we know there's been mutants with Miss Marvel and stuff like that. And that's going to take us into the future. You are somewhat tying yourself to the world that already exists, right? You're kind of saying, like, I'm accepting the Brand New Day world. And even if Secret Wars wipes some of that off the board, that's a choice. And what do you think? Like, does that excite you that they are weaving that together? Or does it worry you that they're like, hey, we're entering they're entering Marvel at a time where things are kind of flawed.
Up in the air, yeah.
Right. And so it's like, is it holding them back to be tied to this world that people kind of didn't really respond to for most of the last 5 or 6 years?
Jean Grey's inclusion into this, if in fact that is Jean Grey, I think may or may not bite them in the end when it comes to what it is that they're trying to create after Secret Wars. Because there will be that confusion, and in terms of how they do that, how they transition from Secret Wars into this new MCU 2.0. What is a result of that? So it's a tough thing to say if they've made a poor decision, because again, we don't know. Secret Wars is a big event that will change everything, supposedly. How they go about doing it will be something that people either will accept. I mean, they'll have no choice, but will they accept it with like open arms, or will they watch it with their arms crossed?
Yeah. So now I'm going to link. Here's a Feige quote. This was from a few months ago, but I think it's really topical, and this leads into what you're talking about. He said, quote, the X-Men have been a place to tell stories about young people who feel different and who feel other and who feel like they don't belong. That's the universal story of the mutants. That is where we're going, end quote. That is at once incredibly topical to today's society, maybe more so than it was when, as you said, when the X-Men were conceived of and written. The divides, the inequalities, the discrimination, the inclusion themes really centered on different they centered on several features, right? Race being a big one of them. Civil rights, obviously, the movement was a huge proxy for what they did here. There's obviously other divides now that they can explore that would be very topical to young people in particular. Even if they're trying to market to a wide audience, they market to parents. They're like, this is the plight of young people. There is obviously huge risk in doing that, right? You're treading into the heart of messaging, into the heart of agenda, into the heart of things that some of the movie-going audience has revolted against in the last 5 or 6 years. I have maintained that these characters give you a green light to do that because it is their very essence to explore that. But if you explore it, as I said, the art of exploring it, we have seen directors who are horrible at it, and we see the Ryan Coogers of the world who are maestros at it. It can't mess that part of it up.
Yes, absolutely.
Right from the first movie. If people walk out of the theater in the first movie and are like, that felt like a preachy course, too much of this and too much of agenda, I think is over. I think it's over before it begins. Yeah. But if it's like, if they can find that balance of like, I'm being educated, I'm being taken inside the mind of young people and the struggles and the battles, and it's being waged in this form of mutant powers and villains and cool story, then you've got something. But man, this feels like a tightrope to me.
That is absolutely right. This definitely is a very what's his dude's name? Walter White, tread lightly situation. So right now we're sort of exploring, in the beginning stages of exploring what this Mutant Saga will look like. So this is just the first part, again, prelude to what is to come with the Mutant Saga and how they're going about. Right now, they seem to be asking the right questions and taking the correct approach in terms of how you think about this. How we receive it and how they deliver the message will be something of it has to be perfect. It has to be Luke shooting that laser into the Death Star. It has to,
2 meters wide.
It has to be that, or else the failure will be met with a lot of disdain, and it just won't be a good thing. And then we'll get more content on Bo DeMayo and what he thought of it. But let us know in the comment section below what you guys think of Jake Schreier's thoughts on the X-Men and how they're going to be approaching this. Remember to hit that like and subscribe, share with your friends. And again, if you haven't heard it anywhere else, you heard it here first on the Nerd Report.